Welcome to a Reality NSFW. This is the Deep Dive podcast. We are talking episode number 7, the epic episode, might I add. I am your host, Lauren Pratt, along with my co-host, Alex Rubino.
Thank you, Lauren. And today we are joined by a friend of the podcast, a mutual friend of us both, is none other than Dan Montchal. Dan, how are you?
I'm doing great. Fired up to talk about this episode. It was pretty crazy, so definitely looking forward to it. How are you two doing?
Good. Dare we say best episode of the season?
That's probably a fair statement.
Fair statement. You got a little bit of everything. Epic tribal council and epic twist to an advantage actually not working.
Yeah.
So I was there for that.
I've never been so happy to see the players break the game by executing a twist poorly. But I will still say the third episode where we didn't have any idols or advantages was my favorite, but this was definitely a close second. But we get a previously on Survivor. What is going on? And it's amazing. I think it just goes to show how much nonsense they put in the game that we have to start with an advantage tally. It was literally like, all right, here's the refresher on everybody who has everything because it's all going to come out tonight. Then we have that. We have the new alliance that formed, talking about Erica and the Hourglass and all that nonsense. But then we get to Exile and we see Erica one more time dealing with a lot of rain. And then the little flashback about herself. What did you both think of really Erica on Exile and the whole Hourglass decision?
I mean, as far as the Hourglass decision as a whole, I thought it was pretty much a no-brainer. I don't see any scenario where she wasn't going to smash it. But as far as her being on Exile, I thought that was pretty nice because Erica is one of the few people that's kind of been purple that we haven't seen anything from. So it was nice to get at least a little bit of her backstory and stuff that we weren't getting from her before.
Right. As I said last week, I would have smashed it right then and there with Jeff in my presence, but I do agree with Dan. It was good for us to get some of her backstory. She has become more relevant to the season, which that's something you definitely want to see. The only thing is, after her moment was over. She was not relevant again within the episode. So that concerns me slightly that she's not going to be a huge factor moving forward in the game.
I think this actually bodes well for her because I think after she's the centerpiece of the whole, I guess, merge and previous episode, she faded into the background and did a beautiful job of it. Granted, she was immune, that helped, but I really like that from her. And I have to give one bit of credit to the editors this season. I've really been pleased with the editing. A lot of the new tricks and twists that they've done with the editing have been great. For example, they have Erica talking about how she's becoming more authentic with herself, and they do this little slow-mo and flashback to her on Exile. And I don't know why. These little things that they're doing, and then later on in the episode, the flashback to Xander giving Tiffany, it's yes, these are the risks and the twists that I enjoy that don't mess with the game, but really enhance the viewing experience. I don't know if either of you caught that or cared about it, but it was just. What have you both thought about the editing this season, really as a whole, I think?
I've really enjoyed kind of where they do the flashbacks. It's something that I know a lot of people have said that it's very similar to Australian Survivor. Mm-hmm. And I think they've done a nice job of doing that. Not only, in the beginning few episodes where you were getting some of their time at home during quarantine before they were coming out, but it's nice, especially when we get to the scene in this episode, it's nice where I feel like it plays better where you see what the result is and then you can jump back and see this is how it really played out.
Right. So I'm going to say why I think this editing was brilliant for this episode in particular. Yes. Going into, bouncing forward a little bit, going into the tribal council phase, because if I would have seen prior to Xander giving away the idol to Tiffany, having Evie there part of the conversation, to me, it almost would have become predictable. And I don't 100%. Like predictable in a season. So the fact of the matter is they did not show us that at all going into tribal council. But then when the situation occurred, we get the flashback. Amazing.
Yeah. It was just lined up beautifully because if they told us, like you said, it would have just been predictable and boring. If they didn't even the moment happens and they don't give us the flashback, we're well, this feels kind of cheap, if you know what I mean. Because it's and they've done it before where you're trying to piece together a story and they're not giving you all the pieces and you're well, here's how we think this happened, and then exit interviews become our source of info, which is never really good. But shall we get to I called it the actual immunity challenge of the episode, where both the, I guess, tribes come in. They bring in Erica. She talks about exile being tough. And then they're like, oh, yeah, let's talk about this twist. And just like, I get what they were going for with like the jaws dropping in. To me, that was cool. That was about the only thing that was cool with it. But I'm just wondering, was like Danny ready to explode at the moment? Like, I imagine if I was there in that moment, I find out, hey, I won a challenge. I did all the work. I don't have immunity now. I would have been like cursing at Jeff, probably saying this isn't a twist. This is just garbage. I don't know.
So I've heard the outcry, like I'm sure everyone has, of how it's not fair. You were promised immunity and then you were taking it away. And I guess before I get going, I'll preface it by saying not a fan of the way that they did this. But I think it's all in perspective because they say, well, this has never happened. If you're going to make something like this, you have to let the players know. And my only counter has always been, what about the idol nullifier? Because in season 37, Hot Cop Dan, he knew nothing about it. It was always assumed, hey, I have an idol, I play it, nothing can happen. But no one was rooting for him, so nobody cared that he kind of got taken out on this twist where it wasn't until it happened to Janet that everyone had this outcry.
Yeah. Lauren, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, you make a strong argument for it for sure. My only thing is, if you go back to after the immunity challenge occurs and you have that conversation with Danny saying to himself, all right, what was promised to us? It was a feast and immunity. And I get where you're coming from, where people didn't know about the idol nullifier necessarily, but the fact of the matter is it affected so many people, not just one singular person. And the fact that you're taking away immunity from a large group of people such as that, I think that's where people kind of feel a certain way about it. But the idol nullifier, in essence, does screw someone over. And you are right. More people are rooting for Janet. And so when that did happen to Janet, people were pissed off about it, especially because it was over a coin flip, which is, to me, awful.
Well, and like I said, I'm not by no means saying that, oh, I thought that this was a great twist. I just heard a lot of that, oh, this is something that's never happened before. And it's like, well, you can look back and there are certain examples where this isn't the first time that it's been unfair to a player, that they didn't know something like this was coming.
We've definitely had players get screwed over before. And honestly, I don't think anybody enjoys it. Even if Sydney was your least favorite player on this entire cast and she got voted out because of this, and somebody you loved got saved, are you still enjoying this? It's like, well, they were just defenseless and really couldn't do anything. But if you're gonna do something like this, change it like slightly where you have a little bit of an out. Maybe like don't say the words like immunity. You have like I don't know what you can do. But you can say something and Jeff be like, I never said I was giving you immunity. I said you were safe tonight or something, or that you were on the merge tribe or whatever. Even then it would be like a little sneaky, but I'd rather sneaky than a downright lie, because at this point then, and I'm worried in the future, we're going to have players who are told of things like from Jeff of, oh, you have immunity. Oh, you have an advantage. Oh, you have this, you have that. Here are the rules of the game. And they're not going to believe production. And then they're going to be scared to make any kind of move. And that is the slippery slope I think we could be going down with the idol nullifier, and now especially with this nonsense.
Well, I get where people are a little bit frustrated as well, because the challenge essentially meant nothing, really. They really didn't even need to have that challenge go on, because if you won, it got stripped away from you anyway. But Deshaun even said it. It's season 41. Mm-hmm. I guess you just have to know that anything can come at you. And that's my thing with it. I love Survivor, and if all these changes are going to continue to happen, for me, that's okay. Just as long as people can somewhat expect that it could be coming. And Deshaun even said, when Jeff said at the beginning of the game, drop the 4, keep the 1. So in essence, Jeff is saying this is a new era of Survivor. So if this is the way it's going to be, then it's just something people are going to have to think through strategically moving forward to maneuver the pieces, where it's not going to always be set in stone, predictable with this is exactly what's going to happen.
For sure. And I think the goal of a lot of these twists is to get the players to play harder, to be more aggressive, to do all these things. And I think they may be soon running into the big brother trap that I call it, where they come up with all these twists and all they do is get the players to be more conservative and close to the vest and not aggressive because they don't know what's coming and now they can't even trust production. That's my concern. Can they right the ship and fix this? Yes. Will they? That needs to be seen.
I guess the way that I kind of look at it is I think Survivor was pretty much like everyone during quarantine when we had over a year at home to yourself. People were making decisions that maybe they wouldn't under everyday circumstances. So I think just for the fact that they had, over a year in between seasons, they kept kind of thinking like, what about this? What about that? And maybe we went a little bit too far.
A little bit.
Well, I will say this. The people that I wanted to see scramble and go to tribal to make it more of an exciting episode was the group that ended up going to tribal council. I think if it would have been the other group that had to go, it would have been a little more predictable. This created more of an exciting episode. Yes, the twist was but just the fallout from Sydney's exit, it was almost perfect. And I have to point out and say, I freaking loved Sydney on this season. I think her being the way that she is, unapologetically herself, she owned it. She is who she is. And she gets praise in my book because she was never anyone but herself.
100% there. And I think this is another case almost like 37 where the twist was bad, but even so, we got a good result. Not Sydney going home, but even if, well, maybe it was for some people, but the whole just excitement of it. I think that was good, but I don't think correlation and causation aren't the same thing. I don't think the whole twist caused this episode to be good. I think the players caused it to be good. And if the twist went another way, it could have been garbage. But
so you're saying, Lauren, you wouldn't have loved to see Erica and Heather scramble? We would have gotten some content from them.
Would Heather be in trouble?
Nobody knows. Nobody knows anything.
No one
about
even
her.
knows who Heather's aligned with.
I mean,
and see, that's the thing. I at least want to know who she even wants to work with in the game because we have none of that.
Literally, people. We are 7 episodes in. Take a guess how many confessionals Heather has right now. Guess. I know the number.
Isn't it 2?
It's 2.
It is 2.
Yeah.
The woman has 2 confessionals in 7 episodes. That is a record. She is on pace to be the least edited person in the history of Survivor. And yes, there is a statistic for it.
Isn't it 4 confessionals?
Yeah, but it's just by percentage.
Oh.
Yeah. So if this continues, she is not getting any airtime. And it's like, I want to know a little bit about her. Then we see in like the tribal, for example, her and Erica are just sitting down, and then she's like scrambling for a minute. And I was like, oh, Survivor's crazy. And that's all we get. We get nothing. And I'm like, I just want to see something from her. But you know what? For her sake, I was happy she was safe in this group. But back to like the whole challenge. So Erica obviously smashes the hourglass. The only way I could see that she doesn't do it is basically to say F you to production and say, I don't like this twist. Even if it screws me over, I want the integrity of the game to remain, so I'm not going to. That's the only way she would do it. But obviously no rational player in the game would with $1 million at stake. I'm just saying that would be funny. But in the end, so who's not safe? Evie, Sydney, Ricard, Nasir, Deshaun, and Danny. They're the ones who had to compete. And then who became safe were Erica, Heather, Tiffany, Shan, Liana, and Xander. Which, thinking about that would have also been a fun group.
No, nope, not as fun as the group.
No, it wouldn't have been as fun. It wouldn't have been as fun. I still think they would have been interesting.
See, I did like the idea of having a group safe. Now, obviously, people are going to be upset because the first group won, then they had to compete. But I did kind of like for this first merge episode, rather than just being, well, it could be everyone and getting a lot of little confessionals going in a billion different directions, was you knew who it was down to, and it ultimately came down to 2 or 3 people. And so you got a lot of content on that. So I actually did enjoy that aspect.
Fair enough. Can I ask you both one question that I think has been plaguing my mind all week? So we have this challenge. Ricard beats Evie and Sydney by seconds. What if Sydney wins this challenge?
If Sydney wins the challenge, I think Ricard's gone.
Yeah, I think the same thing.
I do too.
100%.
Is it 100% though?
No, it's not. It's never 100%. But I'm just saying, if you look at the dynamic of everything that happened in the episode, I think Ricard would have been the easy out, how Sydney was the easy out for people.
The only thing that I would have been curious about is, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more when we get there, was it was Shan who went to Liana, be like, hey, you got to turn on your own. And I get that Shan and Ricard had a little bit of a falling out kind of towards their end, but would she react the same way if Liana or Deshawn or Danny said, hey, you got to be the one that sacrifices one here? And that's why I still say it's probably Ricard, but maybe not.
That's where I'm at. I'm completely with you because I definitely think Shanna's digging her heels at least a little bit. And it's like, no, Ricard's not going if I have anything to do about it.
But she would never play the idol for him. So I think what she would do is she would make her voice known. But if people aren't biting it, I think at that moment you say, all right, gonna rein it in a little bit because I don't want to make myself become a target if he does go for me to fight for him so hard and he still ends up leaving.
Yeah, but how is Shan convincing enough is my question, because I think she could be. And maybe it sinks her game, but I definitely think she could be convincing enough where it's like, you know what, maybe there's an outside shot that say like Nasir went home in that moment, for example.
But Nasir would never been an option really to go home just because they all know that Nasir had the idol, so why would you want to risk that?
Well, you do see after the challenge that Ricard does throw Nasir's name out, and that's pretty much shot down right away.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm just thinking, like, you know what? If Sydney is safe, then I think the deck could be reshuffled a little bit.
I think if Sydney's safe, it still comes down to Ricard and Evie. I think you see the same exact outcome, just Ricard takes Sydney's place and goes.
More than likely, yes. Yeah. But I definitely think there is a different way to get there, which is also interesting. But you know what? That's the beauty of this game. We can just say what if, and we will never truly know. All right. One other thing that was cool about the episode, and I guess maybe the whole 2-part extravaganza, we had about half an hour of just camp life after the immunity challenge. I was like, oh, we're doing the immunity challenge this early. Okay. And then I was like, wait a minute. They're still going. We still had camp life. This is what I want to see. Yeah, I wish it wasn't all about the advantages and who has what. But I love just seeing them strategize and kind of go crazy over who the hell can go out of a group of 5 that were eligible. I don't know. To me, that was just like one of the better parts of this whole 2-hour extravaganza. I don't know about you guys.
I mean, it definitely was nice to see a lot of those conversations because we haven't gotten to see a whole lot of it this season. And that's why also when we did the previous on Survivor, I actually enjoyed where I get that, it was all about the advantages. But I mean, thinking about it, like, oh, that's right. Evie and Deshawn were both, went to Shipwheel Island. And so yeah, I just thought it was nice to kind of see, you got to pretty much hear from everyone on where their head was at. Of course, the typical Erica and Heather, but everyone else, you kind of got to hear a little bit about.
Can I also point out the alliance that we will never get? And I'm very, very sad about it with Tiffany, Xander, Evie, and Sydney. I would have loved that group together because I find it so funny that you see the situation early on in the season with Tiffany and Sydney, and they were definitely not on the same page as each other. But then right when you get to the merge, they're like, yep, we can work with Sydney. I wish we saw a little bit more of those conversations amongst that group because they really did all want to work with each other.
It's so interesting because I also think you have Tiffany and Xander who got along, but were like butting heads at moments, and Heather and Sydney who just straight up didn't. That would have been interesting. I just don't know if Sydney would have been capable of it, honestly. Like, they say they wanted to work together, but how long would it have lasted?
Well, I know what Sydney had said from kind of her exit interviews that she kind of put herself in the middle. And I think in most seasons, she would have been in a really good spot, but it just kind of happened that the way, kind of the deck fell this time, it didn't play out well for her. But I think under different circumstances, there's a chance where she could at least make a little bit of a run deeper into the game.
Because she still would have had the duo with Deshawn, Danny. Those two are together. She would have been fitting in nicely because they really didn't want to target Sydney at all. So she had a bunch of people that were in her corner. Just the problem was she didn't have an immunity idol that could save her, and she didn't have the fact of an alliance member that could potentially play it on her. And that's simply the issue that she basically was one of really the only option, because everything else is ultimately a huge risk, because you know that no one's going to play the idol for Sydney because everyone knows where the idols are. Nasir's not pulling out an idol for Sydney.
One thing with that, I agree with you that she was, I don't want to say screwed, but in a bad spot by not having an idol out of that group of 5. However, she also didn't have one person, not only who wouldn't play on her, just who would fight for her. It was sure Danny and Deshawn wanted to keep her, but they weren't sticking their necks out for her. Nobody was sticking their neck out for Sydney, whereas Evie had people sticking their necks out for her. Ricard likely would have had that with Shan. Deshawn was having that a little with Danny. She didn't have that at all.
See, I still think that it's because Danny and Deshawn, specifically Deshawn, knew that his name was starting to come up, that he just kind of had to make that decision. Had he been safe, I think he would have, because he did see that they didn't want to let her go. And I mean, had not everyone known about the knowledge is power advantage where they're able to plan around it, like it's Evie who goes home, or in their minds anyway, and then they can still bring her in close. I think it was just Deshawn knew that he was also being thrown out as an option, so that's not the time to stick your neck out for someone. That's where you kind of got to go into preservation mode yourself.
Self-survival. That's what Deshawn did, and he had to. He had no choice, because if he is trying to protect her, then all of a sudden the vote can get flipped on him. So I don't blame Deshawn for what he did. He had to do that, because he even got up again at Tribal Council and said, you know what, I'm not ready. And I think that was a great move on his part.
100% agree with that. My thing is, Danny and Deshawn, I still think were closer to each other than they ever were with Sydney. I think you need that one person who you're their number one, they're your number one. Flat out, you need that, especially in a game like this. And she didn't have it, and that's what I'm talking about with somebody who's going to stick their neck on the line for you. Whereas, Deshawn wanted to, but also, he didn't want to go home. Danny wanted to, but he'd rather lose Sydney than he would rather lose Deshawn at the end of the day. And I think that's, while she was playing a good game, I definitely think that was a shortcoming of it.
Well, I think for her, she just didn't have probably an opportunity to form that bond, because you knew it was going to be Danny and Deshawn right off the bat. She had pretty much turned on Nasir, ratting out that, he said that Danny and Deshawn were going to look for idols. She clearly didn't have that great of a relationship with Erica or Heather. So
that's her fault.
Maybe she could, it is, but maybe she could have found that at the merge, where just that person wasn't there for her on her starting tribe.
Yeah, and I agree with what Dan's saying. I think if she would have made it past this next vote, I think she was set up pretty nicely to make a pretty good run for herself. And you also have to look at the fact she was close in that immunity challenge as well. So she did amazing in every single challenge thus far in the season, that I do think she would have been able to pull out some of those wins to be able to save herself, and then use that to then create more allies. Because if people know that you're capable of winning, it's so much easier when you have the necklace around you to get what you want on a vote, because you can't be voted out. So then you can push the initiative.
There's no doubt she was able to create allies. Although I do think her just having bad relationships with certain people just obviously is not good. Even if you win all those immunities, are you gonna maybe get a tight number one ally out of it? Probably likely not, and at least not one that's going to fight tooth and nail for you to go to a final 2 with, for example. But overall,
I think part
she
of
did
it
what
just,
she could, I think.
I think part of it just depends, the way that the tribes line out, because I know a lot of people have said it, but who she reminds me a lot of is Tyson and Tocantins. Like, number one was coach, which most seasons you're not going to have a number coach. That Tyson can probably be the one that isn't as outlandish as everyone else, where Sydney had a lot of that confidence, bravado, and arrogance that there really wasn't anyone who she could mesh with without changing maybe part of her personality, which isn't going to go well if you can't play as yourself in Survivor.
No, it's not. But I definitely think when you're on a tribe of 6, you really need to try to find one person like right away who's on your side, even if you don't really like them that much. But I do think that was a bit of a shortcoming, but I'm not denying she was in a tough spot with all that.
And obviously we're robbed with not having her on the jury, because
oh my God,
that would have been my favorite part in the end game, is just hearing her talk at the end and just asking people questions about their games, because that's just the type of person you need to set the tone at Ponderosa. She would have been the best person from this season to set that tone.
Oh, she would have been a great like jury forewoman. I mean, just her reactions at every tribal, I think, would have just been glorious. She would have been like the Debbie Wanner calling everybody an idiot. I think that would have been great. Oh.
And people have made the jury that haven't made the merge either. So she could have been there.
She could have. I do think they were worried about avoiding a 3-3-3 tie with a final 3 and a 9-person jury. However, they have not done that before, but I think that's what they were going for this season. But I also don't mind a smaller jury. You know what? We don't need 9-10 people on every single jury. And it's like, if we're going to go back to basics in some ways, this is one way I don't mind, even if we lose Sydney on the jury.
Yeah, I would have loved to see her on the jury, but I actually am with you, Alex. I do prefer the smaller juries. I think you kind of get more out of it, especially in the format where it is now, where not everyone kind of gets their question, or at least not shown talking as much. Where I think when you have the shorter one and it's a lot of back and forth, right now you're seeing 3 people kind of hog all that airtime, where if maybe you don't have 10 and you only have 7 or 8, you get to kind of see everyone's questions and point of view at the end.
Yeah, but do you guys like how the new jury format is?
No.
No, I just think that it works better with a smaller jury then, because you get to see everyone. But I would rather go back to the single questions.
Me too.
I think there's, honestly, I don't like the new jury format. I think there was merit to like part of it. Maybe do the part of having everybody ask their questions, and then if you want like a little time for like a kind of a bigger discussion, I'm okay with that, because I do think there's merit to it. My concern is, and this happens more with the bigger juries, is that you are just asking for almost group think at this point. And because nobody really maybe one person wants to stick their neck out on the line for somebody else, it's like, oh, we already, like, so many of us are like convinced it's this person that like that's where the train is going. You can't stop it. That, and then you're also just usually piling on somebody. So with a smaller jury, I'm hopeful that doesn't change. We haven't really seen it, so we'll see with this group. That maybe the smaller jury lets them think a little more individually.
I'm all for changes in Survivor, but that's one of them that I severely miss. Just going back to the questioning phase, because we have seen some of the best tribal councils and some of the funniest moments because of each singular jury member getting to ask their question. And I just think with the new format, we don't even hear anything from some of the jury members and their thought process going into it. And I do think that everyone should be able to have some type of input. And I get where you're coming from with the new format. It's a lot of group think. And so I think that if they really want to drop the 4, keep the 1, go back to that.
Yeah, I don't think they're listening to this podcast, unfortunately.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Otherwise, they would know how to have the show made. We're telling them, here's how to do it right. They would listen to us, but you know what?
Well, they've made so many changes. Who knows if there could be a change that comes at Final Tribal Council?
That would
probably not, but it could.
You never
know. More fire, and then all the way back to normal jury questions.
We could. All right, this is getting too much. We're dreaming too much. But it's crazy when you think about, like, you were talking about the moments in the last 7 seasons that we've done this new format. What are moments you can think of that are iconic? The only memory that even comes to my mind in terms of like the questioning themselves is Dan and Wardog saying the theme isn't on trial, you're on trial. I literally can't remember anything else.
Well, so here's the other issue you run into as well. You have 2 seasons in there where you had the edge. And with that, there are so many people on the jury. And so I think that also factored into it as well. And that's why I'm agreeing with you guys completely. Smaller juries are better.
Yeah. And I think with this season, with this cast of gamers, it's really going to let them think more individually themselves and really hone in on these final 3. Let them get their pound of flesh. I'm looking forward to it, even if we don't have Sydney a part of it.
Question though, I really do want to know this. Any chance that we could get a final 2?
I doubt it. I think Jeff hates it too much. I really do.
I don't think so. Just in the shorter season, and as well as because they just gave Erica 2 nights out on
Exile.
Exile. So I don't know how, unless you start doing maybe some double boots or stuff like that. I don't know how you quite make the days work.
Well, we're at this point the tribal is on day 14, so there are 12 days and so 11 nights to go until final tribal. We need to get rid for a final 2 to work. We need to get rid of 9 more people.
I mean, that would be my favorite curveball the entire season.
That would be mine. But we
final
just
two.
that maybe we don't do fire at 4. Like that would be my favorite. But I think they're so worried about just getting a demolishing of our Rob G. Otis goes out at 3, and then we have a final 2 of 2 undesirable people. That's what they're worried about.
You get the same thing though either way, because look at it, the final 3s though. One person barely gets any votes, and they're just basically dismissed anyway.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right. I think they just want kind of more control of who are essentially the final 2. And now with the fire that's being pushed back further and further, it makes no sense. But that
Dan,
would be
what
a fun
do you
curveball.
think?
I think we'll see it again, and I would even bet that I wouldn't be surprised if we see a final 2 coming in like the next, say, 5 seasons, just to throw people off, kind of keep them on their toes. But I don't think it's happening this season, just the way that the schedule's already lined up, because they would need, that's a lot of people to get rid of in 12 days.
I would never make a bet in my life so much that I would want to be wrong about, but I would bet a lot of money they don't do it.
See, I think they will. I think they
Dan,
will.
How much we bet?
Next 5 season. We can talk about that afterwards.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Afterwards. Yeah. I just think throw another curveball in there, bring back a final 2, and just see what happens with it. And you know what? If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But at least try it, because I do think that'll just create a new wrinkle, because then people aren't expecting it that are playing on the season. Everyone has in their mindset, it's always going to be a final 3. That's what they're preparing themselves for. Guess what? What if it's a final 2? You see that in Micronesia. They're thinking final 3. Oh shit, it's final 2. What am I going to do now?
Yeah.
Well, you think about the last 3 times they've done it. It was Micronesia, it was Tocantins, and it was Cagayan. Mm-hmm. And I get that the past 2 have kind of been blowouts on the votes, but I mean, Steven and Wu were no pushovers. Like, had it gone a different direction, they could have been winners themselves. So I do think that the past few times that you've done it where they're not expecting it, you do have 2 pretty strong, at least, characters at the end.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. They're missing out. I really think that. But can we talk about, again, my least favorite advantage, the good old knowledge is power advantage? Because even if I hate the advantage, boy, was it fun in this episode. And let me say, thank you, Shan, so much for telling Tiffany about the advantage. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Your bad gameplay is what may have saved the season, and at least saved the merge for me.
So I understand that you can probably put a lot of it on Shan for, letting it slip in front of Tiffany. But so many people knew about it at the end. Honestly, I think the person who Liana has to blame herself, because I think any time where you are so singular focused early in the game is we have to get out this one person. Mm-hmm. It never goes well for them. And she just had blinders on. We have to get out Xander. That's all that matters. That's going to be my move, getting him out. And I think that was her first mistake.
Mm-hmm. My opinion is she shouldn't have used it on this round, because I think keep it in your back pocket. If other people already know about it, they're going to probably expect you to then use it at this tribal council, which she then did do. I think save it, use it for later, because in all honesty, I don't think Nasir's going to give his idol to anybody. So you can just take it from Nasir later on.
I mean, Liana telling Shan about the advantage. I mean, she couldn't get around that because they were both at ship with Liana, and Liana knew. So I think that's Shan's problem with Tiffany finding out, and that's what obviously opened the floodgates. I agree with you. Liana's problem, I think, was the way she had blinders on, was like, I want Xander. But you could almost say this advantage was just burning a hole in her pocket at this point. Once everybody knows about it, it's almost like the advantage is meaningless anyway. So I get the just like, all right, let me just try to get it off of Xander. But I also, at that point, might have just said, you know what, here's the knowledge is power advantage. It's going in the fire. I don't want to deal with this. I might have just done that in front of everybody because I almost know at this point everybody knows about it. Everybody can like game around it, and I'm almost just guessing who has an advantage, who has an idol, and then I also have the idol, and everybody will know I have it. So I almost was just like, you know what, burn it. What do you think about that?
I don't think anyone's ever going to burn it. But I think
I know they
what
won't.
I was actually incredibly impressed with, and again, and I do have some, I guess, some negative things to say later on. I think there were some missteps, but I give Shan a lot of credit here for the fact that she was the one that pretty much went to Liana and said, now's the time. Because I think essentially what she did, Liana, was make it so that Shan was always going to be her tightest ally. Once she makes this move, she can't go back to Yasa. And I think what she also intentionally did was pretty much guarantee that Liana has no shot of winning this game.
Right. Shan's actually super convincing, and I do agree with you there, Dan. I think she was pushing her agenda, but in a way where she was making Liana think, all right, I have to do this. And Liana's thinking in her mind, I don't want to make a mistake. So this is something that I'm going to do, and I'm not going to second guess it. And I think that's exactly what happens. Yeah, I don't think her throwing it in the fire would have necessarily helped. I just personally think for Liana's sake, hold on to it a bit longer, or this is what she could have also done. I think come back, tell people you got the extra vote, which everyone is expecting that you could have potentially gotten. And then what you can do is maybe if you want to share some information with Shan, Liana pull Shan aside and say, Shan, guess what advantage I found in the woods or something. And so they're not thinking that she got it from the summit or wherever. I think she could have played it so many different ways.
Okay. One thing I want to posit in the first place, what if she had just told Shan she had an extra vote? Because that would have been totally believable. Obviously, maybe once Shan has to see it, it's a different story. But then everybody's thinking all she has is an extra vote. What could she pull that off? And would it have been smart for her too?
I mean, I think it would have been smart for her too, but I don't see a situation where Liana was going to do it. She felt so bonded to Shan from their trip at Shipwheel Island. And you can see every scene that we see of them this episode is they're pretty much glued together at the hip, that I absolutely think that it would have been the smart thing to do, but I don't think she was ever going to do it because she felt like, she found her best friend out there, at least in the game. And she's just found someone else that she can kind of share her, I need to get Xander out over everything idea with, that was going to support it.
The biggest issue was I don't think she had a moment to talk to Shan alone and explain exactly what the advantage was that she got. And so when Shan brought it up in front of Tiffany was like, oh, you did get something. And then Tiffany's assuming, all right, it's got to be the extra vote because that's what every single person has gotten thus far. And I just think sometimes the wrong people are standing in a conversation that you don't want there and something slips. And I just think it would have gone a different direction if Liana had a moment with Shan alone before Tiffany had any involvement in the situation.
You could say that, and you could also say if Shan didn't accidentally blurt out Liana's advantage. I do think it was an accident because it was on purpose. I think that's just a really bad move.
But it's not really that bad of a move for Shan. Shan comes out of this looking pretty good. It honestly hurts Liana.
It hurts Liana more.
But Liana still trusts Shan. That's the thing. If that happened to me and Shan would have said something in front of someone that I wasn't expecting her to do so, I would have second thought everything. But Liana's not doing that. Liana's not saying, oh, is Shan still with me? She still thinks Shan's 100% with her. So it's really not anything hurting Shan's game, to be honest. I don't know what you think, though, Dan.
I mean, I think whether it was intentional or not intentional, I think it works out great for Shan's game because Liana literally has no other place to go in this game. After this, she's not going to be able to go back to Yasa. They're never going to trust her. They're never going to work with her. So kind of that alliance that they've built with kind of Shan being her number one and then in with Danny and Deshawn, I don't think Liana really has too many other options of where she can go. Mm-hmm. So I think it's great for Shan.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could say that part of it is great for Shan, that Liana has nowhere to go. But also, Liana has nowhere to go. She's very well a target for the next episode. And obviously, one has no shot of winning the game. but does she have a shot of even like making it through the next 3 or 4 tribals? That's dicey, and I think Shan almost wanted to have her cake and eat it too. And you could say, yeah, she got out of the move where Shan's in a great position, but because Liana is powerless and a big target. But once Liana goes, that could be bad for Shan, because Shan doesn't have another ally she is that tight with, that's singularly tight with. She has a decent relationship with Ricard, but that's fuzzy. Danny and Deshawn, I still think, are more loyal to each other than to her. And then everybody else likes Shan, but no one's really fighting for her like Liana is. So I'm a little bit concerned.
My only counter to that is who's going after, I think, unless you get vindictive Ricard, where he decides, he's had enough. He sees that maybe Shan has, jumped ship and not tight with him. I don't think anyone else is ever going to target her, which, like I said, whether it was intentional or not, is genius, because you'd have the Yasa members where if they want to get back at someone, they probably want to take out at Liana first. Or if you're just looking at straight threats, I think Deshawn is a much bigger threat on paper than you put Shan to. So I think at the very least, it gives her a buffer where I don't think anyone's going after her first, and gives her at least a few days if one of her allies gets picked off.
Notice what you said, though, Alex. You said that you don't think Liana has a shot at winning the game. Now, if other people in the game think that or realize that, they might say to themselves, all right, if she doesn't have a chance, I'm going to keep her around a little bit longer, because why get rid of someone that you think doesn't have an opportunity to win this game? And I actually think you're incorrect. I think Liana is somebody that can turn it around. If she's capable of doing that, we will see. But I don't think she's completely written off as someone that can't win this game.
I think her odds are very low. And the odds are low because she is, I think, such a big target the next few episodes. If she can manage to skate by, then I think she is in a good position. But the point you said there of, if Liana is perceived as somebody who can't win for being erratic or all over the place or whatever the reason is, and people want to take her to the end, then they're going to say, you know what? Who's the goats? And I'm not saying she'll be a goat, but if she ends up being in that position where she can't win, who do they go after? They go after the goat's number one ally, because Shan is taking a seat next to Liana. Whoever it is in the game is going to realize, you know what? Shan's really good at this game, and they also want that seat next to Liana. I don't think it's going to happen that way, but that's my concern for Shan if these players wise up quickly. But the way she's playing right now, I think she's like you said, she's in a great spot. Got out of this vote relatively scot-free, which, credit to her. And I'm excited to see where it takes her. But I hope that Shan has to sweat a little bit, because she's such a great player. I think she can get out of it, but I just want to see her sweat a little.
See, I still think that we're going to see that civil war between her and Ricard at some point. It's just too early to do that. I think that's coming, but that's probably 3 episodes away.
Yep.
Just because there's too many people to kind of make that big move yet. But I don't think you leave in all that footage of them bickering back and forth about that extra vote that much if it doesn't have a payoff further down the line.
My concern, 2 former relationships, I'm thinking we could see it mirror. 1, Zeke and David. If they both get so much tunnel vision that they are only Ricard, I only need Shan out. Shan, I only need Ricard. They're both going to sink their own games, flat out. I think they both sink their own games. If they go about it almost like Christian and Gabby, where I think Ricard is more of the Gabby, and you know what, I need him out, and maybe I need her out. Maybe he does the move of vote too early or vote too late, or even right on time. So either he can take the shot and get her out, or if he doesn't, maybe Shan can emerge and be like, you know what, you're gone. You're another mantle, another piece on my mantle. And then I think she could be set up well. But I'm so concerned, but also curious to see how her and Ricard move together in the game, if they do at all.
So timing's everything in this game. We all know that.
Yep.
But the biggest piece you have to look at is Shan and Ricard, both savvy, both super, super strategic players. And I think what they're going to run into is, when is the right time to make that move? And I don't think either of them are going to do it soon, which is what Dan said, because there's no point in doing so. If you have somewhat of that relationship with one another at this moment, you need each other in the game for the time being. Now, the biggest thing that I think hurts Shan is Ricard knows that she has that idol. And I do think Ricard is the type of player that he's going to be able to figure out, okay, can I rally the troops to get Shan out without Shan knowing, therefore she won't play the idol? Because the other thing you have to look at is Shan's so good at creating relationships with people that people might let Shan know, hey, there's a chance that you could be going, you might need to play your idol. So I think that's the only thing Ricard could run into is Shan playing that idol and therefore tanking his game.
I think you make a great point there. I'm really curious to see how this plays out. But let's talk about the Yasa. I'm calling them the Yasa Three. They're the Three Musketeers. They're like the Island of Misfit Toys. Xander, Tiffany, and Evie. And I think it was so interesting seeing the three of them bond in the way they did and pretty much just be against Liana so hard because of Liana's tightness with Shan. I think it was just that and the way that Xander was really rallying them together as a team and then really not thinking individually at that point, which is, I don't know if I expected that, but I liked it, oddly enough. I don't know.
No, I thought it was a three that, going back a few episodes ago, you assumed would never happen. But I think they kind of realized that they were getting backed into a corner. And I mean, there's nothing that's going to bring people together like, knowing that you're on the outs. And so I think that was great. And it was nice to see. Yeah, I don't know. I think it was nice to see Tiffany get a little bit more screen time and kind of talking about, you're starting to see that she's smart enough that, hey, I'm not necessarily fitting in with Liana, despite the fact a few episodes ago I wanted to go against Xander. Maybe this is my best outlet for right now.
It was great. I love to see it. I'm rooting for them. But Deshaun loved what he said at Tribal Council with making Xander question a little bit if Evie could be fully trusted. And so I think Xander moving forward is just going to have that little piece in the back of his mind saying, Evie was spilling some information, because at that moment, Evie thought Xander was going to be out of the game. And so I do think Xander now has that information where he can say to himself, you know what? For the time being, I'm fine with this three. But if I need to throw someone under the bus or make different moves, it's all right. Evie already went against me a little bit, so I shouldn't have an issue with it on my end.
I think this episode really showed that Evie, I think, is a really solid player and really capable, but is a little too strategic. I think we were talking about that earlier in the season, where telling Deshaun everything was just not necessary. And I feel so vindicated in this. Xander can play, and Tiffany too, but Xander is here to play. Everyone said to me, oh, he's just a loyal guy, and he just like wants to be there, and he's like having a good time. This guy is loyal, but boy, does he want to play, and can he play hard? And I think he's almost dead to rights, but I'm so excited to see how he can possibly try to wiggle out of this.
I think he needs to win one of the next two immunities. I think if he can win one of the next two, he has his idol for a round. He can be safe from winning an immunity. And I think by then, that's when the larger group, you generally start to see them turn on each other. And so I think he needs to find a way to survive 2 rounds. And if he can do that, I still don't think he can. It'd be tough for him to make a run to win the game, but I think he can make a run at it at least.
Good thing is, look at this. At Tribal as well, Tiffany got validation from Xander whether or not to play that idol. If you have someone that's in your alliance that's asking you personally, should you play it or not, that tells me that Tiffany is probably going to give the idol back to Xander at some point, or hold on to it just so people don't necessarily know where it is in the game. But I do think, as Tiffany stated, Xander, it's your idol.
I think that makes her look good to everybody else in the game, because I think Xander and Evie are picked off before she is. And I think Tiffany is definitely capable of wiggling in, making relationships, because everyone can be like, you know what? Yeah, you're loyal. It was Xander's idol. You held on to it, and you gave it right back to him, because I think she is giving it right back to him.
I don't know right away. She might hold on to it just for a little bit longer.
But I do think Xander's like, can I have it back? And she's like, hey, here you go. Sure. And they all celebrate. But just watch out for Tiffany. I can't believe I'm saying this, but she has a shot, a small shot, but I think she has a shot to win this game finally.
I think she's in a pretty good spot because I think, like Xander, she's going to make it a few more rounds and she isn't going to have to use an idol or win immunity. Because now who knows? A lot of crazy things have been happening this season, but I think what you'd see in most seasons was, okay, well, we tried to get Evie out. We wanted her out. It didn't necessarily work. And we know Xander has an idol. So let's split the votes, pile half of them on one, half on the other, and you end up losing. Where I don't think Tiffany's brought up as, hey, let's try to go get her. I think she's able to slip around a little bit longer. And you're seeing that, like Xander can play, I think Tiffany can as well.
Mm-hmm. I think Tiffany is a name that could be brought up, actually, because I think people might be realizing a little bit that she's more capable than she lets on. And she's not this crazy paranoid player, which she has her moments of being crazy paranoid, but she's very strategic. And the other point you brought up that I want to address is you said that you think Xander needs to win immunity one of the next 2 rounds and use the idol the other. I almost think Xander needs to win the challenge this round, and the reason being is I think that gives him more staying power. Because like we said earlier, you win an immunity challenge, and almost essentially this might be like the first immunity challenge, we could say. You win that, people are coming to you. You're almost the centerpiece of the vote. And then I think that could set him up to maybe not need his idol to vote right after if he doesn't win immunity. However, I think if he doesn't win immunity, obviously has to play the idol. Almost certainly will have to play that idol either for himself, Evie, or Tiffany, and then he's powerless and then has to play the immunity game. And at that point, his ship almost has sailed, in my opinion. But if he wins this one...
Well, the only reason why I don't think everyone necessarily needs to come to him, because, I don't know, Liana's, whatever her blood feud is to try to get Xander out, that it's just, this is my sole goal. Her getting duped, I don't think it stops that. I think that that's going to continue to be, we have to get Xander out. We have to get Xander out. She's going to tell that to Shan. And I think that kind of is going to make it hard for him to maybe slip into the shadows a little bit.
I don't necessarily know that it's going to be a huge issue if one of those 3 Yase members don't win individual immunity, because I do think everyone else that's still in the game, they're going to question themselves, all right, where is the idol? What's going to happen? Because then if you do, splitting the votes is always risky because the wrong person could end up going home. And if they don't know necessarily where that idol is, who it could get played on, they could make it through another round or so just based off of paranoia and people freaking out about it, because you see it all the time. You saw in earlier episodes, Tiffany got paranoid that Voce could have pulled something funny and Xander, and then the person that Liana didn't want to go home went home in Voce. So I do think paranoia can play a huge factor, especially in the merge. So they might be able to sneak by one more round without having to play anything.
I think taking them as a group, I think you're right. But I think Xander in particular is the one with the target on his back. I think Evie and Tiffany have targets, but I think they are able to squeak by without winning immunity right now. Xander, I'm questioning for sure, because I think he's just such that vocal point after the spectacle he made with the idol of the whole, oh my God, this guy planted a fake. He gave Tiffany the real one. He told Tiffany what to do with playing it or not playing it. He was right about playing it. And everybody's giving him credit. The attention is all on him. And that's where my concern is. And I think that's honestly, don't write off Evie or Tiffany yet, because I think this can bode well for them, actually.
I don't know. I think what you're going to see happen, which we haven't talked a ton about him yet, is I think Deshaun's going to be one that's going to create that narrative of, we got to get Xander, because he seems to be someone who has, I don't know, his hand's the most on the pulse, specifically this episode. I feel like every read that he made in this episode was spot on. Mm-hmm. And I just think that he's the one that's probably going to keep the pressure on Xander.
My concern is that everybody knows that Deshaun is the person with the finger on the pulse. And I think
they, though?
Yeah, I don't think they do.
Because this episode, they're all talking about targeting Deshaun, at least like Yasa and everyone else is because they know how good of a player he is. They know how good he is socially. They know he's got a strategic acumen. They know he's smart. He's good in challenges. His time could run out, I really think, just because within that Blue Vu group, within the Liana, Shan, and Danny group, I think he's the most vocal of them. And I'm just concerned. That's all. I think because he is like, yeah, almost the face of the other side in the game. And everyone can realize at a point, you know what? This guy's too good. Let's just get rid of him.
Yeah, but I
can
think
see it.
Deshaun was targeted because the options were limited in that situation.
They were,
which then in turn, Deshaun did what Deshaun needed to do to save himself because they weren't going to target Nasir because of the idol. Ricard was safe. So then you're really only down to Evie, Sydney, Deshaun, and Danny.
and I think, yeah, maybe Deshaun isn't the target right now, but I don't think he has staying power for the longevity of the game because of, I think because of this episode, partially, but also just I think his demeanor. He was the one exposing Evie. I think these players are going to wake up and be like, you know what? He's the one putting out everybody's name. He's the one always thinking. I could see it ending badly for him just because him showing how capable he is. We'll see.
So maybe I'm reading too much into the edit, but after the challenge where you had Danny was heated and Deshaun was saying like, hey, like calm down, like, yeah, it's not great, but it's part of the game. What that told me right there is that Deshaun's more adaptable. He's more adaptable. He's going to be able to be more fluid in the game. And I kind of read that is there's going to be a time where Deshaun is going to say, hey, this is my move to make. Maybe it's to get a big threat out. Maybe it's to jump ship to another side. But I think that's where you're going to see that Deshaun can see writing on the wall and he's going to make his move that's going to kind of put him in a better position.
Yeah, my read could be completely off, but I still have Deshaun as my winner pick.
Okay.
Like it's just I think Deshaun can move past this vote in particular because as we've already said, limited options, limited amount of people with the opportunity to go home. I think Deshaun has good reads on people, and I do think that he's also likable and easy to have a conversation with. So I wouldn't write him off. I do think he has a lot of staying power in this game.
I think he's one of those where I think the target will get too big and he'll go home. But if he makes it to the end somehow, I think he has a good shot to win. But that brings me.
Sorry,
go ahead,
Alex.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Take us to the next topic.
I just want to talk about Danny for a minute because I think he wasn't even brought up as a target. You're at the merge. This guy is just a complete giant. You can't look at him and not think, oh my god, this guy is like a tank. He's such a threat in all the challenges. He's playing, I think, a really good social game. I think him being the number 2 to Deshaun that isn't the one who's vocal and out there, I think is really good. I see what you're saying about him maybe not being totally adaptable, but I do think he could sneak his way through and get further once Deshaun is gone. I don't know. I haven't thought about it until this episode, but I'm thinking Danny is a dark horse winner contender for me at this point.
So I guess my only counter to that, and I do really like Danny. I'm enjoying him on the season, and I do hope he does well. But you see it time and time again that if someone goes after Deshaun, you're going after the top person. They don't always take the shot at the number 1. Sometimes they take the shot at the number 2. And if that is in fact where Danny is, that could put him in a place where someone goes after Danny to weaken Deshaun's place.
They could have done that this episode though, and they didn't.
That's true.
That is true. But I think the only thing that does, maybe hurt Deshaun a little bit, I will say, is burned that extra vote, which I don't blame Deshaun for doing so. I actually think it was a good move on Deshaun's end to use that at that time, because if you think that there's any chance that that you could go, you have to do everything that you can to save yourself. And that's why Sydney played the shot in the dark, because Sydney thought that might be my only option. Had Sydney voted, it would have been a different story, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't blame him for making the move that he did, of course. But I also think most of the players who are at this point, who are, for whatever reason, contenders to go home that escape, I think it's going to be hard for him to completely just throw away the target that is on his back. I don't know if it comes back right away, but I think at some point we were like, you know what? There's a reason we tried to get him out earlier and not Danny.
So the move of the episode would obviously be, between Xander, giving the idol to Tiffany and getting Liana to waste that advantage. But I think maybe the second best move of the episode in Tribal was Deshaun. And we talked about it before that it was Deshaun put the target on Evie, saying, hey, this is everything that he said. But I think it was more important that, Jeff was like, hey, are we ready to go? And it was Shan who was the one that said, yes, like, let's do this. And it was Deshaun who was like, hey, my name's on the line. No, let's talk one more time to make sure that we have this down. And that's, I think, one of the only negative things I have to say about Shan was she knew she was safe and she was kind of dismissive of, hey, let's do this. And I think that could potentially put her in a bad spot where she's talking with someone and it's just like, hey, you're not hearing me the way I want to be heard because it's my name that's on the line and not yours.
Yep, that's exactly what I was saying with Deshaun needing to get up for that second moment, because I think things could have been different if Deshaun didn't do so. And that comes across to me as Deshaun having good reads, because Deshaun saying, all right, you know what? I'm very much in trouble. I'm not done. I want to talk to some other people and make sure what I want to have happen happens.
I think it comes across to us as a good read. I think it can come across to the players as, oh, this guy is really thinking and also pretty paranoid. I think the moment back at camp where he's like, I'm hearing my name, like we gotta vote Sydney. I think I get where he's coming from completely, and I think he got what he wanted. I think the way he did it, at least from what we saw, was a little too much of I'm nervous, I don't trust you guys right now. And I think, yeah, it's not reality, but I definitely think that's the perception. As we know, perception is reality, where he's very capable, but I also think he's not very comfortable and didn't show his alliance, hey, I trust you. Even though, obviously, I don't think he should have fully trusted them, but I do think the way he went about it could have maybe been a bit better in like acting like you trust them. But it was in a tough spot for sure.
Is it paranoia if you know that your name is out there and you know that there's an idol in play as well?
I think it's paranoia. I think it's justified paranoia, but I do think it's paranoia. And to the players in the game, it might just be paranoia. Especially like somebody like Shan, who maybe isn't thinking completely. Like, she's not thinking in Deshaun's shoes. She's thinking in her own shoes. And to her, Deshaun was being a little bit irrational. And that's something I think, at least.
I don't think she was thinking that he's being irrational in that situation. I think she's thinking that he might need some more clarity on what's happening, because you have to also look at all these different factors. People are talking to so many different people at once. Look at what happened at the end of that tribal council. Huge group right there formed. 4 people on the outs of that group. So that group is solidifying exactly what the plan is. So I think what Deshaun did was nice. Really, really good.
Oh, I think it was great. Like, to save his butt in the game, I think it's great. And I think we're saying Shan was being dismissive. And I think, yes, that's bad on her part. But I also think it could, maybe not totally Deshaun's fault, but I do think it could put it in her mind of, hey, Deshaun's a little sneaky, a little paranoid, and I have to watch out for him. I don't know. I think that could be in the back of her head later in the game.
I think it depends how Deshaun plays for these next few episodes. If he's still being, the vocal voice of that side, I don't think that bodes well for him. But if he realized, hey, my name was just out there, the best thing I can do is kind of, keep a little bit hands off and try to lurk back into the shadows, I think that would bode well for him at potentially making a run at it.
I could not agree.
It just depends how the next few episodes play out.
I agree with that 100%, just because he did a big, bold thing to save himself in the game. If he decides then to lay low the next couple of votes and just kind of be within the alliance, maybe subtly, pitch a couple people's names if it needs to happen. But if he's the pinpoint vocal person saying this is what needs to happen for the vote, I think that's where he's in trouble. What I will say is people he's aligned with have that in the back of their mind where they want to be the driving people to force the vote. So I do think he's able to hide behind some of those other people.
Let's look at the actual vote count and who voted where real quick, because I think there's something interesting to consider. So who voted for Sydney? It was Nasir, Erica, Shan, Liana, and Heather. The votes for Evie were Danny, Ricard, and then Deshaun using his extra vote. And then the votes for Deshaun were the 3 Yasa people, Xander, Tiffany, and Evie. If Sydney didn't play her shot in the dark and voted, I think on paper the right move is to vote for Evie. But that whole group was talking about voting Deshaun. What do you think she actually does?
Votes Evie.
Do you think she was aware of, one, was she aware of Deshaun having an extra vote? I'm just curious what she knew at the time and what you think she would have done. Because I don't think she knows about Deshaun's extra vote at that point.
Yeah, and if she doesn't know about the extra vote, now it's pretty chaotic now. Are you able to kind of step aside and think, all right, math, numbers, this is where everyone's at? Or, I don't know, she also could be the type of person where it's, hey, my name's coming out, like, I'm going after you. I think
That's what I think is interesting.
We didn't really hear too much from Sydney on that side, because all you really got from her when they had their small conversation was like about potentially playing the idol on her. You didn't really see her saying too much, so it's hard to really say.
But if you know that it's between, most likely, if that whole entire group over there is standing with each other and you know it's most likely between yourself and Evie because you're not with that group, your group is much smaller. I think you go into self-survival mode, which we saw Deshaun do for himself, and say, all right, the two people they have to be talking about over here in this conversation has to be myself or Evie. I might as well throw my vote on Evie, because if enough votes go that way, my vote could matter for her then being eliminated from the game.
Or if you don't know about Deshaun's extra vote and it's a little bit less, does she assume that the idol is just going to be played for Evie? Because in that case, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, that's what you also have to consider, because I think
I don't know.
I think she's thinking the idol's likely played for Evie. There's a small shot it's played for me, and that's where I think she honestly, I think she votes Deshaun in that moment for that reason of no one's playing an idol for Deshaun. As far as she knows, Evie is getting votes from likely Danny, Ricardo, and Deshaun, or some three of that group, more than likely. She's probably getting 4 or 5. And then, well, what's she going to do? Try to either force a 4-4-4 tie, or at least like add an extra vote to Deshaun's name and hope that, like, yeah, honestly, I think she has to hope for the 4-4-4 tie. And that's the only way she can cause it.
But you also have to look at this factor. Do you actually think that Xander was going to play the idol for Evie? Because I gotta be honest, he didn't seem like he was thinking about it too hard when Tiffany was about to pull it out, because when Tiffany was pulling it out, Xander was like, nope, don't play it.
I think after everything, he felt more comfortable with the fact that he was like, I think the plan was executed. Nobody knows that Tiffany has it, which I also thought would have been really interesting if Tiffany never like stood up and said that she had it. But I think if things don't go that way, maybe like the whole advantage thing doesn't happen and he doesn't feel as secure, I do think he plays the idol for Evie. But in this moment, I don't think he does. And Sydney has to at least consider it, though. I think it's something she absolutely has to consider, whether it's rational or not, or whether she thinks it will happen or not.
I don't know. I think she was just in a tough spot because she was the only old Luvu that wasn't in that conversation on the other side. And so it's like, I'm relying on these people that she'd met Tiffany once for, 30 seconds that one night on Shipwheel Island, and everyone else she just met. So that's she's in a rough spot there.
Right. And all the people that she even said that she wanted to work with didn't vote against her.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the vote happens. I like the little shot of Sydney throwing the shot in the dark in the fire.
Yep. So her. Spot on.
It was
I wouldn't expect anything less.
Very much her. And I also I liked her final words of, right, I'm relieved I'm not on the jury, so I don't have to see their faces again. And one of my roommates who doesn't watch the show was like watching that with me, and he's like, is this person just very full of themselves? I'm like, yeah, very much so. That is her to a T. Which I just find funny that like you even like hear one soundbite of Sydney, you know who she is immediately. Which I appreciate her being full-blown Sydney up to the very end. But I don't know. This vote was just so exciting for me. I'm so thankful that the knowledge is power thing was exposed, because if it wasn't, very likely Lana takes Xander's idol without him knowing. He's powerless, and maybe he even goes home at that moment, which I think would have sucked. But do you two have anything more to add, I guess, about the tribal or the episode as a whole before we
I do.
Commercial?
Dan, who is your winner pick?
Ooh,
Shan.
yes.
Shan. Okay.
And
I don't feel as great about it as I did 2 episodes ago, but
Me too.
But yeah, she's who I picked before the season started and felt really good about it. I think her issue now is that she was forced to play so fast and, out of the gate. And now I think the best thing she could have done was dial it back. And I don't think she quite knows how to do that. But she's still in a good spot, so I'm not saying that she can't turn it around. But I think we've seen over the past few episodes kind of a few, I don't even see they're big, but a few minor flaws in her game that I don't know if you're just trying to see more of Shan's game or if the editors are trying to kind of show like the rise and fall of her. Who knows?
Okay. So I had Shan as my preseason winner pick. I told you I thought Danny was a dark horse winner contender. The other people I just want to consider for a moment that I didn't think had any shot of winning before this episode. Nasir went from being like target number 1 at Luvu, everybody knowing about him. He has this whole story. He's very energetic. Everybody knows he has an idol. To not even brought up. I get that's partially because of the idol, but still, the fact that he wasn't brought up at all gives me at least a little bit more consideration than I did before to him winning. I think Ricard has almost gotten his game back. I think by him being in the shadows, I think that can help him a lot as well. And the last person I want to consider also is Tiffany. 3 people that I think you can now say, actually 4 if you add Danny to the list, that all have shots to win. I don't know if they have the best shot or like great shots, but that they're definitely their win equity, I think, went up with the whole merge twist in this episode in particular. Am I missing anybody?
The only person I disagree with you on is Nasir.
Okay.
I think that Nasir is going to be along for the ride, going to provide us with some great confessionals, some great content and all of that. But I just don't think Nasir comes across to me as the type of player yet, and it could happen, as someone that's going to be able to steer the votes in Nasir's direction, because you really have to have at least a couple people on your side that are backing you 100%, and we just don't see that at the moment that Nasir has.
For sure.
So I think I have to agree. I think my point of not having Nasir in it is I think it becomes really prevalent now of who do we have to take out before we get to Final Four that's definitely going to win that fire-making challenge. And I think Nasir has to be a front runner for that everyone knows, or if they don't know, by him telling you can see him outside to know how good he is in that situation, that I think that's what potentially takes him out, towards the end of the merge, because it's, hey, if I have to go up against him, I'm not going to beat him in fire.
I think that's really interesting. And one thing, I was talking to a friend of mine about this over the weekend, and I thought about how Nasir is at a little bit of a disadvantage in the game because of the language barrier, that English isn't his first language, that as he says, he sometimes says things wrong. And I think, obviously, I don't think any of the players are like mistreating him because of it, or at least intentionally doing so. But I do think we've seen it in the past where players who have a little bit of a language barrier, it's harder for them to be taken seriously as game players, as people who are like driving the action. And I don't know. I was like doing math, like some like quick reflecting. We haven't had a single winner in the 40 season that has had really any kind of language barrier. The only person that's had a little bit of an accent really even was Natalie, and I think her English was still perfect. And I think that's something to consider.
I think if Nasir got to the end of the game, I think Nasir could convince people to vote for him. I just don't see him getting to the end of the game. That's kind of where my point comes from.
I agree with you that I think it's harder for him to get to the end of the game, but I do think it's something standing in his way if he gets into the end of the game. That doesn't rule him out, but I think makes it even harder for him to be taken as seriously, I think.
Look at people that have made it to then a couple of times. If you can make a jury entertained and keep the conversation lively and stuff, and they're not bored, people might vote for you for that reason, because if he's able to make his argument, pitch his case, I think Nasir's personality can help him prevail. If you're sitting at the end, super boring, super just not able to articulate your game whatsoever, then people aren't as inclined to vote for you.
Yeah, definitely fair enough. Dan, what do you think about this?
How I mean, I think if he gets there, I think Nasir has a great shot at winning. I think because he has his story, like he
Yeah.
tells a good story, everyone seems, while they might not be aligned with him strategically, you have never heard anyone say a bad thing really about Nasir's. There may have been a Sydney confessional in there
Sydney.
somewhere, but
No one
that would
besides
be
Sydney.
it. Yeah, but that would be it. And so I think if you're able to tell that whole story, I think it's a good one, which is why I don't think he makes it there, because you have you have that story, B, you'd have him being really good at fire making. And I think when you just kind of combined all that together, and from what we've seen of him in a social, I guess, standing, I don't know if he has the ability to work himself out of it. Would love to
And
see it, but I think he's got a lot stacked against him as we get into the final, I don't know, 6, 7, 8.
and I think that last point is where I could also see his English proficiency being a disadvantage to him. Not obviously taking him out of the game, but I do think it's something to consider. Unfortunate as it is, I think anything that makes the game harder for somebody, and a player like Nasir who already isn't driving the action, isn't in a great spot, I think is worthy of considering. But boy, if Nasir can make it to the end, I will be so happy. You have no idea. And I would be celebrating to the high heavens if he wins this game. And also, fun fact, follow his wife on Twitter. She puts out like little, I'm calling them Nasirisms of things he says slightly wrong. And they are the funniest things because he's just like such a sweet guy.
Oh, on Instagram, there was a picture of him posted where he was on turf and he was next to a goat. He said that was his Halloween costume.
Oh my God, that was hilarious. But yeah, is there anybody else that you both think could win the game that we haven't really brought up? At least as a dark horse.
Agree with Tiffany. I think she has, I don't want to say a good shot, but I think she's an outside shot that I think you can kind of even see if he started to follow her narrative from the beginning of she was, this liability and challenges, and you could kind of see, her growth narrative throughout the game. It's not who I'd bet on, but I could see it happening. I think between Shan and Ricard, I said that Civil War is coming, and I think if it comes too soon, I think they both have zero shot. But if they're able to wait it out, the winner of that, she was my winner pick. I can't give up on her yet, and I also do love Ricard, so I could see that. And I'd say probably Deshaun's the front runner at this point in time, is who I'd say.
Interesting. All right.
The other ridiculous comment that I actually threw out to Lauren the other day, and we'll just put it on record, is what I'm curious about is, so if you go back when Erica was going to exile, it was Deshaun who pointed out that, oh, no, she's fine. She can make a fire. And they purposely showed her making a fire. Is that foreshadowing that she could win a challenge down the road involving fire? I don't think so, because we haven't seen really anything of her, but I wouldn't be surprised.
See, I love how Dan reads into things. That's why it makes me entertained whenever Dan's like texting me, hey, this is my thought. It is so out there, but I think it's a possibility. What I will say is,
I love it.
Overall, love this cast. I would be happy with pretty much anyone winning the season. If for some reason we do get more Heather content and she's able to showcase a game that she's playing, think maybe, possibly. I really do seriously feel bad because
oh my God, me too.
Any person has an opportunity to win this game because they're still in it. I think we have our clear front runners and the people that we think have a stronger possibility of winning. But if you make it to the merge, anything can happen. Anyone can win because so much shifts and shakes, especially with advantages popping up left and right. So I just am curious to see how this whole entire merge is going to go down, because it's going to be quite interesting, especially with everything we still have left on the table. And I guarantee more twists are coming.
I will say, if the woman who has had 2 confessionals in 7 episodes wins the game, that would truly be drop the 4, keep the 1, we're starting Survivor over, and nothing is going to make any sense anymore. Unfortunately.
So, I do get that everyone hates all the advantages. And like I said, once again, not saying that I'm out here supporting it, but I do think it makes it different when everyone seems to know about all of them.
Oh,
That,
100%.
yes, it's not great, but it's different because I don't think you're going to have, whatever we're calling it, where Suri goes out. Like, I don't
Advantage
think,
Geddon.
yeah, sorry, Advantage Geddon was blanking. I don't think you're going to get that because everyone knows about him. And if, you think, oh, well, Alex, I know that you know that I know that you have an extra vote or an idol. I think it gets people to play them earlier because, that I have it, or vice versa.
We shall see. I think that's a good thing, but I want to, if you're going to do this, and I think production so much wants like the shock value of, oh my God, instead of the, oh my God, there's this twist in the game that I know is in the game. I don't know who has it. I don't know when it's in the game. Like if they told people, hey, there's going to be like a knowledge is power type of advantage this season. Or there's going to be something where somebody can like steal your idol if they know you have it, or like telling them about that, or telling them like a little something about maybe immunity doesn't always mean immunity. Something like that at least gets the players thinking about it. And it's on when it's on their radar, they're able to be a little bit more paranoid and play the game erratically, which I think would be more fun. But you know what? We'll see. But
my biggest thing is never leave anyone out because everyone has a chance. We're at the merge. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be crafty.
Right.
And I just think we've seen it before. Someone with not many confessionals, Natalie White, made it to the end of the game and was able to win. So that's why I'm not fully counting out Heather. Do I think Heather's going to win the season? No, I do not. But at the same time, we don't know because there is still so much time left. You can see someone take off from the merge. Their storyline can come out and they might have a chance. But I will still stick by my key front runners at the moment with being Shan, Deshawn, Ricard. I think Tiffany now has a shot at winning this game. And I might throw in, as my fifth person, I might throw in Xander.
Why don't we just put half the cast in then?
No, I'm just saying like my top people that I think have a strong possibility of winning this game.
I like Xander as the other dark horse pick, but I'm gonna, I'm veering off the beaten path.
That's why I'm tossing Xander in there. But at the end of the day, it's a great cast. I'm loving the season. I know other people aren't loving the season as much, but I am.
I'm loving it, even though I'm frustrated sometimes with the way it goes. I'm like, I still love these people, and at the end of the day, I watch Survivor for the people that they've got, watching them get to play the game. Even if it's like, all right, I wish the game was different, I'm still happy to see them in there playing hard. And yeah, I would say my top winner contenders at this point, probably Shan. I still think Evie is a little bit of a shot. Ricardo's big up there for me, and Danny, I think, is probably my other one that I'd say watch out for him. Yeah, I guess you never know about Xander. You never know about Nasir, but those would be the big ones, I'd say.
Yeah, if I had to throw three out there, it'd be Deshawn and Shan, and I think I'm probably the highest of maybe the longer shot ones on Tiffany.
Okay. We'll see how it plays out, and I don't know. Yeah, who knows? I love that we're just like, we all think
it would be to
it's
Matt's delight if Tiffany took over. That's his MVP of the season.
Oh yes.
Yeah. All right. If Heather wins the game, though, I will be also excited and just so confused with like, what the hell was I watching? And I'll probably have to rewatch the season in like a day and be like, wait, what was I missing? Did they put Heather in anything?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, you still have to just consider as an option. And do I think it's going to happen? No, I don't. But I just am going to throw it out there as a possibility because that's the point of the deep dive. You have to give different reasons on why each and every person has a small percentage, if it's that, to potentially win.
At Lauren _Pratt 6 on Twitter says Heather's going to win the game. Called it.
I just don't think it bodes well for casual fans if you're talking to them and you mention Heather and they go, "Who's Heather?" Like that's never.
No, it's not. That's
never
awful.
what you want.
It's not a great look. It's not. But you never know. You could see her prevail in this merge section.
I want to see Heather at least have a little bit of a story, even if she's like awful at the game, even if she goes out and plays glory. Just give her something. But we'll see.
Well, at this point, I think I'd rather be even more invisible than the only time that they highlight you is like, man, she's awful at challenges. I could just be like, no, just leave me out of it altogether. Like,
I'd rather that than
like I wasn't here.
I forgot that. I literally forgot about the whole challenge moment. Damn. Wow.
She's had the iconic poses though, like, the second immunity challenge, her on the bench, that was great. And then you also had her at this last tribal council just chilling, like looking around, enjoying her surroundings. So I mean, she's been there mixed and mingled in certain situations.
They cast her. They put her on the cast.
I'm trying. I really
You're
am.
trying. You're trying to give the editors
so
credit.
hard.
And it's like, I love the editing and all they done. This is just not a good call. I'm sorry. Justice for Heather. And Erica too.
I mean, we've probably talked about Heather on our podcast more than any other podcast. So, I mean, we're giving her the spotlight she deserves.
Yes. Oh.
I think she's starting to come up more like across in the Survivor community, but ironically, because they're like, we know nothing about her.
Yeah. That's what's almost unfortunate, but alas. Can Heather win the game? Who knows? But we'll see. All right. Are we ready to go to commercial and then cut back with Dan and I doing the ratings?
Let's do it.
All right. Lauren, anything you want to say before you have to bounce?
I think I've said everything I could possibly say this evening about the episode, and I'm excited for the next one and even more excited to do the next deep dive because I do think this next episode is going to be very, very critical and crucial for so many players in the game because if they don't get what they want on this one, I think that they're going to have an uphill battle and we're going to just see what happens.
I could not agree with you more, and I can't wait to do it with you again, Lauren, next week. All right. We will be back in a couple minutes to rate the final 11 that we have left. All right.
Lucy Nicotine is a company founded by Caltech scientists and former smokers looking for a better and cleaner nicotine alternative. Finally, tobacco alternatives that don't suck.
Researched and developed for 3 years to be made for people, not patients. Lucy has created a nicotine gum with 4 milligrams of nicotine that comes in 3 flavors: wintergreen, cinnamon, and pomegranate. Lucy also has a lozenge with 4 milligrams of nicotine in cherry ice flavor. Each and every flavor actually tastes great, and it's convenient and discreet. Products can be enjoyed anywhere, on flights, at work, on the go, or even in the gym.
I am so happy that Lucy is sponsoring us. Ever since they came on board, I have gotten no less than 5 of my friends transitioned over to Lucy and put their cigarettes down. They like the gum. I'm used to seeing the packages all around. This stuff is great, and it's really helping people make much healthier choices. So get on board and join the Lucy movement.
Hey, it's 2021. Get rid of your cigarettes, unplug your vape, throw out your dip, and get some Lucy nicotine gum or lozenges. This is the real deal. A subscription to Lucy comes directly to your door each month. It's so simple that you don't even have to leave your house because Lucy has delivery down.
Reality NSFW listeners, go to lucy.co and use promo code SURVIVOR to get 20% off all products, including gum or lozenges. That's lucy.co and use promo code SURVIVOR at checkout. Also, I have to give this disclaimer. Warning, this product contains nicotine derived from tobacco. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. That's lucy.co, and be sure to use that promo code SURVIVOR.
This episode of Reality NSFW is sponsored by Blue Chew. Say it with us, Blue Chew. Blue Chew is making waves and bringing more confidence to the bedroom by offering chewable tablets that can help men get stronger and longer-lasting erections. That's right, we're giving away super hard dicks.
Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, but in chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. Blue Chew's tablets help men achieve harder, stronger erections to combat all forms of ED.
Blue Chew is an online prescription service, so no visits to the doctor offices, no awkward conversations, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. And it ships right to your door in a discreet package. The process is simple. Sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. And the best part, it's all done online.
Blue Chew's licensed medical providers work with you to find the right ingredient and strength for your prescription. Don't like swallowing pills? No problem here. Blue Chew's sildenafil and tadalafil tablets are chewable. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA and they prepare and ship direct, so it's cheaper than a pharmacy.
Hey, if you're looking to give that immunity idol to someone, or you don't want to be voted out of a crater, don't worry, Blue Chew's got you covered. So if you could benefit from extra confidence when it's time to perform, visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information.
And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use promo code SURVIVOR at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's Blue Chew, BlueChew.com, promo code SURVIVOR to receive your first month free. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast.
All right, we're back. Lauren is gone, unfortunately, but Dan and I are here to rate and rave about these players after sadly not doing it last week, which boy did I miss, but you know what? We didn't have much to go off of. And now we do. We've had a tribal. We've had a boot somehow, some way. And Dan, are you ready to go into rating these people?
Let's do it.
All right. So let me pull up the graphic again. And the way I was thinking the order we go in this time, I split the players up by the group that they were in when they were put for the challenge. So I figured we start with the group that didn't have as much going on, and that is the group people who were safe. So let's start with Erica. What are your thoughts on Erica so far, this episode and the game as a whole, and looking forward?
So outside of Heather, she's probably the person that we've seen the least. We have gotten a little bit more of her while she's been on exile. It wasn't a good sign that her name was being thrown out a lot while she wasn't there, but I do think that she's not in a terrible position. If I was going to put a rating on her, I'd probably give her like just a 5.
Okay.
Like, I don't think that she's in a great spot by any means, but I do think that there's at least a way for her to make some moves. I don't necessarily think she will, but I think it's possible.
Yeah, I'm at a 6 for Erica, and for the reason of she was put in a bad spot, going to exile and all that, and I think players talking about her is just a pure fact of you're the only one who's not there who she had no way to defend herself. I do think her being targeted to live is a different story, but I like the way she really fell back into the background once she got back to camp. Obviously, she was safe, and that had something to do with it, and obviously the hourglass move was smart. So I think she's in a good place to survive a couple votes. Can she win the game? I don't know. I would love to see it. Because I think it would be really interesting to see her rise from the ashes and win. But can she? I don't know. So she's a bit better than average for me. And I think it's one of the high spots I've had of the season at a 6. But
all I'll say for her was, don't forget my prediction. She has a chance of winning a fire making competition. Like, just mark it down if it happens. And if she gets voted out next week, just erase the tape. It was a bad call.
I mean, you could still say that she would have won the fire making challenge. The only way you look bad is if she gets to fire and gets demolished.
That happened to erase the tape. Just episode 7 didn't happen.
I would enjoy it. Just to see you wrong, my friend. All right.
Appreciate it.
And somebody we think that maybe Lauren thinks can win. I don't think she can win, unfortunately, is Heather.
And it hurts. It says right there, Charleston, South Carolina. It's where I live. It's near and dear. And it's just, I don't know how you go above a 2 or a 3, unfortunately. I'd say, well, I'll be nice. She's getting dumped on by everyone else. We'll give her a 3.
Okay. So you want to know what I wrote in my notes for Heather?
Yeah.
I gave her a 4, and I literally wrote, I feel bad for Heather. That's it. I have nothing. I don't know what to go off of. And the reason I have had her at a 5 the last couple of weeks because, well, she hasn't been doing anything and not gotten anywhere. I brought her down to a 4 because I think as the game moves on, like we're saying, her shot to win goes down and down and down and down. And I would think she has almost no shot to win. Do I think she has a shot to stay in the game a little while? And the answer is yes. And that's why I'm not having her at a 2 or a 3 just yet. I think as the weeks go on and her position doesn't improve, she's just going to keep tumbling down. And if she tanks the game, then she'll just bring her score down automatically. But
so, Alex, you said you were looking at it. I'm curious if you remember or have it up. Who is, in fact, the person that's the least edited? Because you said you were looking at her
it's Heather.
Percentage.
Right now, it's Heather.
Well, I meant so
Oh, but
I guess
besides,
next up, who would it be? Yeah.
oh man,
Do you remember off the top of your head?
Do I remember? I remember. Zoe Xanadakis was pretty high up there. Let me see if I can find it really quickly. 'Cause I'm really
Because
curious.
my only thought would have been the two people that I would have potentially thought of would have been Chelsea from Ghost Island, but she even won some immunities, and I think she only had like 4 or 6 confessionals her season. And then I'm blanking on her last name, but Julia from Edge of Extinction also kind of had some of that as well.
Yeah. All right. So I'll just
Carter,
really
Julia
quickly
Carter.
looking at this graphic. One, Julia is not in the top 25 in terms of underedited
Oh,
by
okay.
like percentage. Chelsea is number 2. It was Chelsea. Very closely after was Zoe. So that's where I
Okay.
had them mixed up. Yeah. But currently Heather's not even close to them in terms of percentage of screen time she has not received. And yeah. And fun fact, the first guy on the list is at number 5. It's Leaf Manson.
That sounds. He had a box. That's really all that needs to be said.
Yep. He had a box. All right. So we go from invisible to way too visible, in my opinion, and that's Liana. Why don't you start with Liana, Dan?
I honestly, coming into this episode, I had high hopes. I thought that, I have enjoyed watching her this season. I did, really like her linking up with Shan and then linking up with Danny and Deshawn. I thought that put her in a good spot. But the fact that she was the one that had to essentially cut her pre-merge tribe out of it and has no place to go, I don't see her path for winning the game. I'd have her at a 4 because I think she would need to play a masterful second half of the game, in my opinion, in order to win.
Yeah, I'm usually the harsh one, but for the third time in a row, I'm 1 point higher than you. I have Liana at a 5. So the move this episode failed. It flat out failed, and I don't think she can really get any credit for it because, there are parts of it that were like a bit of luck, but parts of it just she didn't play it well. But however, she still has the alliance that has, I've heard, been deemed the camp out unofficially with Deshawn, Danny, and Shan. She still has that. I think they are going to drive a lot of the game. I think they're in a good position as a group of 4. Yes, is she the most expendable one of them? Yeah, sure. But she's still in that group. She's not. I think who's going to want her out? Liana, Tiffany, Xander, Tiffany, and Evie. They don't have the power right now to make that move. So, and she also, I think her not having the knowledge as power advantage is powerful in its own way, of that it doesn't put a bigger target on her back.
So my low rating has nothing to do. Like, I don't expect to see her go home this week, next week. Like, I still expect to see her around for at least quite a while. It's just, I don't see her path to the end where she can win now.
Yeah.
Like, I can see it to the end where she sticks with Deshawn, and Danny, but I don't, from what we're seeing, I don't see where she beats maybe Danny, but I don't see where she beats Shan or Deshawn. And so that's what I'm struggling to come up with, of the way that she could get to the end and also get the votes.
I think her chances of winning are not very high, clearly, but I do think what she showed in this episode is that she's willing to take risks that she thinks will get her in a better position to win the game. Whereas before, I almost thought maybe there's no shot at her cutting Shan. I think she could. I think she could at least try to make that move, and if it works out in some universe, she could win the game. It's a low shot, but I think I'm not completely writing her off, and that's why I'm only at a 5. Because mostly the spot in the game where I don't think she's getting voted out in the next few episodes.
It's fair.
And somebody that is, in my opinion, by far the best position and has the highest rating, again, for me, both are winner pick. I'm giving Shan an 8, honestly. And I haven't gone up to the 9 because I don't think it's very clear yet that she is far and away the front runner. And I think it almost is too clear to the players of how good she is, and that's why I'm like saying, let me pump the brakes on giving her a 9 or 10. But she's in a great position. She's got, she still has a pretty good relationship with her card. She's very tight with Liana. That group of 4, has that I think is rock solid. She's not being targeted. I don't know how that's the case and how long that can continue.
Well, she wouldn't have been an option this episode, so we wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah, but I still think the fact that, like, even like nobody's thinking, you know what, it's like we need to get out Jan. I feel like you'd hear it thought of, and we'll see what the next episode. I think that's going to tell a lot of her future. But yeah, she could still win this game, and I think she might, and that's where I'm at an 8 if she plays her cards right.
She, like we discussed, she was my winner pick. She's still, I'm sticking by her. I do have her at a 7 though.
Okay.
I guess we'll continue the trend of being one low.
Yeah,
I do think that there's a few things that have come up in the past 2 episodes specifically that have been kind of, I'm going to say small knocks. Nothing that's major, nothing that she can't recover from. But she did have the letting it slip to Tiffany last episode.
Mm-hmm.
She had kind of her small play with the, every time that Jeff said, are we ready to vote? She was just like, we're good. And it's just like, maybe, it's some of those small things we check to make sure everyone in the alliance is good. So I'm not saying anything major. It would not surprise me whatsoever she wins, but I do have her at a 7 because there's been a few minor things that I don't necessarily think are the greatest.
And that's part of why I don't have her at that 9 or 10, because I do think she's a really good player, maybe a great player, but I think she's a flawed great player. And I mean, every player in Survivor obviously has their flaws, but I think she is at the top of this group, but I don't think this group is made up of elite players. So we shall see. I'm excited for her because I think she can make a run. I also think she can flame out. She's not careful. We'll see. And somebody who also has the capability of doing both, especially the flaming out part, is Adam Klein's favorite player maybe ever, Tiffany. Why don't you start with Tiffany, Dan?
I have Tiffany at a 6. Okay. I think she's trending up. I really like to see the fact that, like Liana in the pregame, she was very much Xander focused, but the way that she was able to pivot and kind of go back to Xander and say, hey, this is my best path moving forward. I do think that you're starting to see some Tiffany upside. I still think that she does not have an easy path to win the game, but I think it at least exists now, where I don't necessarily think you could say so a few weeks ago.
I think I could say a lot of the same things. I have Tiffany at a 5. She's slowly moving her way up. The reason I don't have her higher is I think she's in a really tough position in terms of her allies. I don't know if she's the one who's going home, but I don't think she can escape very well being at the bottom where she currently is. I think that's a big strike against her. But she showed she's very capable of making moves, and using the relationship she has to get herself further. And I was instrumental in Xander's entire idol shenanigans, and I think if she's not there, it doesn't get pulled off well. So yeah, I would love to see Tiffany continue to emerge and really show us that she can win this game. And well, there's that glimmer of hope. There's some more to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Lastly, on this group of people who were safe is probably the most safe person ever, who had so much of the episode about them, and that's Xander. I have Xander at the same score as I do Tiffany, honestly. He made a great move. I think he also was pretty capable, and I feel so vindicated that this guy is here to play, because I've been saying it the whole season. Every single person I've talked to is like, no, he's not. He's just a surfer guy. He's here to enjoy it. No, this guy is here to play. And I think that's cool if he can somehow make it to the end. But boy, is that target huge. It's just gigantic. And the only reason his score isn't lower is because he still has an idol and an extra vote that I assume Tiffany will give back to him.
Yeah, I'd have Xander at a 5 too. I wanted to go higher because he did have such a good episode, and you saw that he's a lot smarter than anyone gave him credit for. But it's just, he's in such a bad spot right now with being in the numbers of where they are. And especially if he isn't able to win immunity, even with his idol, I think their thought has to be, well, let's at least flush it. And then he becomes, vulnerable at potentially the next tribal. So I do think that we, as we just saw, he's smart enough to work himself out of a bad situation. But I just think that if he's able to keep doing that time and time again, that target's only going to get bigger and bigger, and you can only, pull so many rabbits out of a hat.
Completely agree with you there. I think him winning the immunity next episode is really clear. As I've said, if he does it, things change for him. We'll see. But if he doesn't, the attention is still all going to be on him, and that's never a good thing, especially when there are 11 people left in the game. All right. Moving over to the people who were screwed over. Let's start with the person who we didn't see in the episode, but hearing from Exit Press, Danny made a big stink at Tribal about how much he hated this twist. And I wish I wish they aired it, because it would have been airing all of my grievances out there, but they didn't, because of course they can't. But what do you think of Danny?
I really like Danny. I think he is in a great spot. I think he probably does pretty well for the fact that he's not as outspoken, at least from what we're being seen on the show, minus, maybe that blow up he had of being upset at Tribal, and which I think puts him in a good spot, because he's already clearly a physical threat, being an ex NFL player. And I think that complements him really well is, for the most part, kind of being maybe more reserved at camp. So that way he isn't just immediately targeted as being, oh, well, he's physical and social.
Yeah. I've said it before. I'm high on Danny's game. I think he's very capable. He has a really good social game. Arguably the best social game of the people on this cast, with maybe the exception of Shan. And I maybe say Evie too. He's got really good relationships. He's in a good position with a very probably the tightest alliance in the game. His win equity, maybe. I think it could be there if he starts to emerge, and I think he can. I'm not sure if he does, but if he starts to emerge as somebody who wants to drive the action, and he does, I think he's there, and that's why I'm at a 7 for him.
I have him at a 7 as well. There's only two things that scares me about Danny going home, because surprisingly, I don't, at least in the near future, I don't think he's going to be targeted as a physical threat. We got to get out. I worry about him, I guess, one being like, hey, we want to weaken Deshaun, and so we take out Danny because that's, Deshaun's number one. And then number two, if it's somewhat further down the line, I think, as I kind of mentioned earlier, is I think we saw that Deshaun may be a little bit more adaptable. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it would be something that he'd plan to do. But if Deshaun saw numbers going that way, I could see him possibly voting out Danny, where I don't think Danny would ever do that to Deshaun.
That is definitely that's a fair point. But the fact that he isn't a target right now at all, and hasn't been the whole season, granted, I guess his tribe has won everything, but the fact that his tribe has won everything, he's likely the reason, he's a big part of why they have, impresses me. It really impresses me, because it makes no sense. But let's talk about his right-hand man, the person playing a very similar game to him, at least in some aspects, and that's Deshaun. Why don't you start us off with Deshaun?
I think for the most part, I've been pretty high on Deshaun this podcast. I think he has made pretty much the right read every chance he got this episode. Mm-hmm. And I think it's hard to know that your vote is going to be on the other side. And I liked how he kind of told Xander, hey, this is what Evie said. And so he made his points, but he wasn't over the top about it. He kind of said what he needed to say, and then he kind of just wanted to let that simmer and see what happens. And I have him at an 8. I think he's in a very good spot right now if he's able to kind of take it down a few notches for the next few episodes and maybe let Shan drive the vote.
My concern, I like the move of him exposing Evie. I do kind of wish, I think it might have been more effective if he did it at camp right before. Gets to Xander alone, says, hey, here's what happened. Maybe Xander has time to talk to Evie. Maybe he doesn't. But that's in his head as they're going to tribal when they're not allowed to say anything. And I think that would really let it simmer. Whereas I think in that moment it was, all right, that happened. Evie automatically got to refute him. I don't think she did a great job refuting him, but at least gave something there where they were able to refute him.
I think the reason that he didn't do it was because they assumed that the knowledge power, like Liana's advantage, was going to work, and that they were just going to get his idol.
Yeah, it's so rare though to see a bombshell like that be dropped and somebody completely flip on somebody that at least they thought was like their number one. I don't think that's going to happen right away, but I do think if you let that simmer at camp, you go to him one-on-one privately, so that also not that everybody else knows it too.
Mm-hmm. No,
I don't know. That would have been interesting. But I agree with you on a lot of things. His social game is also really good. He's got a lot of strategic capabilities. He used the extra vote, so if he doesn't have it, I agree that it was probably the right thing for him to do. But I still think his target isn't tiny. And that's my concern. That's why I have him at a 6. So I think he's one step below Danny in that aspect. Is he more capable than Danny? Yeah. But I also think he has a much harder shot of getting further. We'll see. All right. Next up is good old Evie. I still love Evie. Evie was a part of this great move this episode. Barely survived by the skin of their teeth. But I still think we've seen it the whole season. Evie's capable. Evie is very capable of being strategic and making allies and really getting along with people. However, the other flip side of the coin is she is a huge, huge target, and I think could really be the person of, hey, Xander might play the edit for himself. Let's go for Evie. And I think if he wins immunity, that could be doomsday for Evie as much as I adore Evie. And that's why I'm at a 4 for Evie right now.
Yeah, I love Evie. I think she's played a lot better game than I think I even gave her credit for in the first few episodes. But I think she's in a really bad spot right now where, she just got all those votes. She was the person that they wanted out had, they not been able to fool Liana on her advantage. And with, being that close to Xander, it's very easy to just say, hey, let's just split it between the two of them. If Xander plays it, she goes home. And I think you see a lot of that at the merge where, especially if there's a big, episode, boot at the merge, which I get maybe Sydney wouldn't be the biggest on paper, but how it played out, it felt bigger than maybe what it was. I feel like a lot of times that second vote after the merge, you get something that's more straightforward. And I just have a bad feeling that that's what could be happening to Evie here. So I'd have her at a 4 as well.
Yeah. That breaks my heart. I really hope we don't see it. What's crazy is I'm looking at my scores. I have Evie and Heather tied for the lowest score right now. Evie, because I think they're such a huge target, and I think Heather, because Heather's not a target at all and has no shot of winning the game. Which is unfortunate. But we'll see. I still have a little bit of belief in Evie, and that's why Evie's not further down. And somebody that I am impressed with and want to believe in, and I still love him, is Nasir. Why don't you start with Nasir?
I, like everyone else, I don't get how you could not love Nasir. He's great casting. He's great TV. He's a very easy person to root for. But I think he has some uphill battles to climb as far as getting to the end and winning. Like we've kind of already discussed, is we see that I guess he's now more aligned with Danny and Deshaun, but that wasn't always the case. And so he's not part of that core 4. I don't know where he can go and kind of build those allies. So I'd have Nasir at a 6.
I thought of having him at a 7. I'm down to a 6 for a lot of the same reasons. His threat level is oddly enough not huge, which he really should be. Given the way it's been the whole game, I think he's a threat later down the road. I still think his social game is good, but I think the fact that maybe he's a little bit older than most of the people still, his language barrier, I think those are things that just work against him, unfortunately. But he still has an idol. And his threat level isn't huge. And he's capable. He's physically, obviously, very capable. I mean, he won a challenge that his tribe mates are trying to throw. So there's no doubt he could win immunity. But we'll see. I don't know what else I could say about Nasir other than I hope and pray, and we'll make many a summoning circle to hope that he stays in the game long, long down the road. All right. You ready to talk about our last person?
Absolutely.
Last and not least is my boy Ricard. I'll start with Ricard. Ricard's stock went up a lot for me this episode. I think he's in a really good position. Somehow, I think winning immunity helped him get that in that he needs, where he's not in the like big commanding alliance like Shan is, but I think he's right outside it. And I think Shan still views him as an ally. A lot of the people in the game still like him. Anybody that doesn't like him, like Brad, is gone already. He's not a huge threat, but I think he still needs tighter allies. I think he needs one or two people that are really with him and that he is a part of their plans and like a big part of it, and not just, oh, all right, let's keep Ricard along. That's my only concern. But is Ricard capable of being strategic and getting himself in that position? Yes, if he doesn't try to start a civil war over Shan. We'll see. But right now he's at a 7 for me.
So I also have him at a 7. I think one of the things that I really liked of what he did was after the challenge, he threw out Nasir's name. It got shot down quickly, and he knew quickly, hey, no, like, all right, this is not what they want to do. Let's kind of more just sit back, let them drive the vote. And I think that's a good for him because I think, A, it's kind of going to put him a little bit more back in the shadows. And then B, I do think he's going to find those tight allies because, I mean, from everything on the Yasa tribe, they were saying that it became apparently obvious that Liana and Shan were so close. And I think Ricard probably, if he hasn't already, is going to notice that and realize that, hey, who his number one was isn't there anymore. And so I think that he will know that he has to make a move, and it'll just come down to who he can make it with and if the timing's right on it.
All right. So I may have missed it. What do you give it? What score are you giving Ricard?
7.
7. All right. So last couple ones, I'm noticing we started to agree after a little back and forth. All right. I think I've said all I need to say about this episode. I loved it. And I'm really excited to see where the season goes because I think it dodged a bullet in terms of the twist not ruining it, if I'm being honest. And I'm grateful for that. So what else do you have to say about the season as a whole, the episode, why Shan's winning the game? Anything else you want to add, Dan?
I think at this point, I've pretty much said everything that I needed to say. And, at almost 2 hours in, I think we've covered things quite in depth.
I think we have. All right. With that being said, first of all, Dan, thank you so much for coming on. You're a great friend of both Lauren and myself. We love talking with Survivor with you, and I'm so glad we finally got to catch up about this season and not all the past ones that we've talked about so far. If you want to become a patron of Reality NSFW, you can do that over at adfreeNSFW.com. You can go to johnnyfairplay.com if you want one of the many t-shirts that he has made. And when you buy a t-shirt, you get a phone call from him. So check that out. Other podcasts that are going on. Lauren, our friend Alex Trias, Johnny, and Matt are covering the challenge each week on Thursdays at one night after the episode over there. I believe a new season is starting soon. Johnny and Matt are covering Australian Survivor for the patrons and doing a weekly patron Q&A, as well as the fact that Johnny and Matt and Alex will be back 2 nights from now, Wednesday night, to talk about episode 8 of this great, unpredictable, and crazy season. And then next week sometime, Lauren and I will be back with a great guest. We have somebody in the works. I'm not going to say who it is in case they cancel on me. But we're really looking forward to next week and the rest of the season. All right. With that being said, everyone who listened, thank you so much. This was Dan. This was a blast. You are a great, great friend and great compadre to talk Survivor with. And have a great night, everyone.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me.
Autumn is in the air, the pumpkins are in the patch, and our friends at Manscaped are here to make sure you don't carve your pants pumpkins when you're grooming, if you know what I'm saying. Make sure you're keeping things fresh this fall with the leaders in male grooming and their brand new 4th generation performance package. Boys, get ready for cuffing season like no other. Ready to take the leap into fall with Manscaped? Join the 2 million men worldwide using Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with promo code SURVIVOR.
Now, listen, I have had my fair share of mishaps in the past. And going into Halloween, The guys like to dress scary. The girls like to dress inviting. And as a result, you're bound to get your pants down if you do things right. Well, you don't want a big bush down there. You want those things freshly trimmed, shaved so perfectly. Don't use a razor. Go to Manscaped. It's the only way, or you will not be getting treats, but only tricks.
It's time to bundle up with the Manscaped Performance Package 4.0. Inside this package, you'll find their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, Performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold your goodies.
First off, the new Performance Package 4.0 includes the new Lawnmower 4.0. And if you're looking to cozy up this fall, this trimmer is essential.
Their 4th generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. It also gives you the ability to turn a 4,000 LED spotlight on and off when needed for a more precise shave, plus it's waterproof.
I hate shaving in the dark. That 4,000 LED spotlight, perfect. But the Performance Package 4.0 also includes the Weed Whacker to chop your worst weeds up top in your nose and ear. So you use the Lawnmower 4.0 for your rear, use this for your ears. This nose and hair trimmer uses a 9,000 RPM motor-powered 360-degree rotary dual-blade system to provide proprietary skin-safe technology, which helps against nicks, snags, and tugs in those delicate holes.
Seal the deal with Manscaped's liquid formulations. The Crop Preserver ball deodorant. Everyone knows pumpkin spice lattes and ball deodorant go hand in hand.
That's all they're talking about at Target these days. It's crazy. Then after trimming the pumpkin patch and whacking the leaves, give your balls a boost and use the Crop Reviver. Manscaped even threw in 2 free gifts to their Performance Package 4.0, the Manscaped Boxers and Shed Travel Bag. You see me on the road, I have the Manscaped Shed Travel Bag with me everywhere I go. Get comfy on the home and on the go this season.
So get 20% off and free shipping with the code SURVIVOR at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code SURVIVOR at manscaped.com. Make your balls a priority this fall. Choose Manscaped. Your balls will thank you.
Promo code SURVIVOR. I've been trying to cut down on carbs, sugar, and unhealthy food and realize I basically can't eat anything anymore. I mean, I used to love eating that delicious cereal, but I can't. But wait, I can, thanks to Magic Spoon.
0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving. That's only 140 calories a serving.
It's keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and low-carb. Plus, build your own box. Available flavors to build your very own custom bundle are cocoa, fruity, frosted, peanut butter, blueberry, cinnamon, cookies and cream, and my new favorite, maple waffle.
Magic Spoon just recently brought back 2 super popular flavors, cookies and cream and maple waffle, just like you're talking about, Johnny, permanently. When these flavors were first introduced for a limited time, they sold out extremely quickly. You should make sure to get these again and try them for the first time. They're delicious and indulgent.
Every morning I wake up, I look into my cabinets. All I have is Magic Spoon cereal. I have all the options, and I'll do a little bit of I'll mix some cookies of cream with a little cinnamon, maybe cocoa and peanut butter. But oh man, that maple waffle just by itself is just something so spectacular. Hey, they're perfect not only for breakfast but that guiltless midnight snack.
So go to magicspoon.com/survivor to grab a custom bundle of cereal and try it today. And be sure to use our promo code SURVIVOR at checkout to save $5 off your order. And Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked.
Remember, get your next delicious bowl of guilt-free cereal at magicspoon.com/survivor and use promo code SURVIVOR to save $5 off. And thank you to Magic Spoon for sponsoring this podcast.